A modern-day pioneer whose revolutionary ideas are set to redefine tomorrow.
Let me start with a question you know a lot about. What year does man first set foot on Mars?
I think the soonest would be 29.
29.
Yes. And I don't think it's more than 2 to 4 years beyond that.
And that's not an unmanned. That's a human being putting his foot on the surface.
Yes, best case would be 29.
And what do you put the odds of finding either alien life or evidence of alien life?
I don't think we're going to find aliens.
Okay. But do we find ruins? Do we find remnants?
We may find the ruins of a long dead alien civilization. That's possible. And we may find subterranean microbial life. That's possible.
All right. If man lands on Mars in 29, how soon after that do you land on Mars?
It remains to be seen. I'm not sure. The important thing is that we build a self-sustaining city on Mars as quickly as possible. The key threshold is when that city can continue to grow, continue to prosper, even when the supply ships from Earth stop coming. At that point, even if something would happen on Earth, it might not be World War III, but it might be that
a bad virus.
Yeah, it might not be anything. What I was saying is, it's like say civilization could die with a bang or a whimper. It may be that civilization dies with a whimper rather than a bang, and simply loses the ability to send ships to Mars. But so you obviously need Mars to become self-sustaining and be able to grow by itself before the resupply ships from Earth stop coming. That is the critical civilizational threshold beyond which the probable lifespan of civilization is much greater.
And how close are we technologically to be able to do that, to have a self-sustaining settlement on the surface of Mars?
I think it can be done in 20 years.
But it would take 20 years. So we're not, in 29, we're not there. What are we missing?
Well,
what are the big technologies we don't have?
A few people running around the surface in a hostile environment is not going to make it self-sustaining. Right. So you're going to need on the order of 1 million people, maybe 1 million tons of cargo.
So, but you think we could have 1 million people on Mars in 20 years?
Yes.
And what's the technology we're missing right now? When you think about 1 million people on Mars, do we have the ability to get water, to get food, to keep them safe? I mean, what do we need to make that happen?
Well, you need to recreate the entire base of industry of Earth. So, we're here at the top of a massive pyramid of industry that starts with mining a vast array of materials, those materials going through hundreds of steps of refinement. We grow food, obviously. We grow trees. We make things out of the trees. You've got to build all that on Mars. And Mars is a hostile environment. It's it sometimes gets above zero on a warm summer day near the equator on Mars. Really, it's quite cold.
How do you prep for that?
Well, in the beginning on Mars, you have to have a life support habitation module.
Right.
Like you can't just live outdoors. You can't breathe the air.
Like a dome, you think is likely?
Yeah, glass domes type of thing.
Have you identified a location on Mars that is likely to be ideal for a habitat?
What might be Arcadia Planetea is one of the good options. That's one of my daughters is named Arcadia after that.
And what makes that attractive?
My eldest son's middle name is Ares, Mars.
You've been thinking about this for a long time if you're naming your kids around it.
My eldest kid, his middle name is essentially Mars.
When did you get the dream?
He's 20 now, turning 21 soon.
So this is a decades-old dream.
So like when you were 10, did you look up and say, I'm going to Mars?
No. No, I read a lot of science fiction books and programmed computers. But the first video game that I sold was a space video game called Blastar. Maybe I was born this way.
All right, so 2002, you start SpaceX. Like, how do you start a rocket company? Like, what's the first day where you're like, I want to make rockets and I want to go to Mars? Like, what do you do on day one?
So I think you have to start with some sort of philosophical premise in order to be highly motivated. You have to have some philosophical foundation. In my case, it was that we want to expand the scope and scale of consciousness to better understand the nature of the universe. And in order to expand consciousness, we need to go beyond one planet. If we're on one planet, there's too much risk. Hopefully Earth civilization prospers very far into the future, but it may not. There's always some risk that we self-annihilate through nuclear war, or that there's a big meteor that takes us out like the dinosaurs.
Yep.
There's always some risk if all your eggs are in one basket, so it's going to be better if we're a multi-planet species. And then once we're a multi-planet species, the next step would be to be multistellar and have civilization on many different star systems. So in 2001, I didn't think I could start a rocket company. So I thought I'd take some of the money from PayPal. And in that case, I think it was about $180 million after tax, something like that. And I thought, I don't need $180 million, so I'll spend a bunch of it on a philanthropic Mars mission to get the public excited about going back to Mars. Or going to Mars, I should say.
Yeah.
Mars was always going to be the destination after the moon.
Right.
In fact, if you told people in 1969 that it would be 2025, and we've not even gone back to the moon, let alone...
It's hard to believe.
Let alone Mars, they'd be like, what happened? Did civilization collapse?
Stop, yeah.
Like they would be incomprehensible that we've not been to Mars by now, if you told people this after landing on the moon in 69. But
why do you think in 50 years America never went back to the moon?
Well, we destroyed the Saturn V rocket that could take people to the moon, and had the space shuttle, which could only go to low Earth orbit. And then there really hasn't been anything to replace. No vehicle has been made since then that can go to the moon or to Mars until the SpaceX Starship rocket.
Yeah.
So can't go to Mars if you don't have the ride.
So I remember you and I first met in 2013 when I was a brand new baby senator.
Yeah.
And I was still down in the basement office. They stick freshman senators in a basement office, kind of like hazing.
Yeah, I was about to say, it sounds like
it. There are 100 Senate offices, but for 6 months you stay in the basement.
Put you in your place, basically.
Yeah, it's like wearing a beanie. They just,
they want you to know where you're supposed to be.
I got to say now, 13 years into it, I think there's a lot of wisdom to doing that.
Sure.
But you were down in the basement office, and I remember you were coming and sitting down with SpaceX, and at the time, the Air Force was not letting y'all bid to launch satellites.
True.
And so you were coming and saying, look, we got a company, I think we can do a really good job of this, and yet we're locked out of this. It's a little amazing to think the journey SpaceX has gone from then to now.
Yes. It's hard to believe that this is all real. Because originally, it consistent with my belief that we need to become a multi-planet species. I thought the only way to do that would be through NASA. So, and I thought, well, if I can just get the public excited about Mars, then they'll do a mission to Mars. And so initially, my thought was to send a small greenhouse with seeds in dehydrated nutrient gel, then land the greenhouse, hydrate the seeds, and you see the sort of money
Here's your
shot.
proof.
The money shot would be green plants on a red background.
Yeah.
I also recently learned that money shot has a different meaning in some other arenas, but anyway.
Yeah, I'm glad you didn't do that. Very different story.
But what I'm trying to say is the captivating shot would be the green plants on a red background. Yeah. And then hopefully that would, if we did something like that, that would get the public excited about Mars, that would increase NASA's budget, and then we could send people to Mars. Like,
So your original dream was NASA to do this?
Yes.
Not you?
No, the original plan was literally to take a bunch of the money from PayPal, and I guess by some people's definition, waste it with no profit.
Yeah.
On a non-profit thing. I wanted to spend a whole bunch of my money for free to get NASA's budget to be bigger so we could go to friggin' Mars.
Right.
Wow.
That's what I wanted. So
That was the holy grail.
That's what I wanted. I was like,
So when did
Damn
you
it,
change
why am I not
directions?
going to Mars? That's what I wanted to know.
Well, when did it strike you, okay, you're going to have to do this if you want?
Well, I'll tell you, it gets crazier. All right, it gets crazier. So then I couldn't afford any of the U.S. rockets because, as you know, the U.S. rockets are way too expensive. The Boeing Lockheed rockets are crazy money. I didn't have. I didn't even with 180 million. There's no way I could have afforded.
How much were they back then?
Well, with the additional stage to get to Mars, it would have been about like 80 million. So technically, I could have afforded one of them, but I wanted to do two in case one of them didn't work.
Yeah.
So and then I didn't have enough money for that.
Yeah.
And I was sort of prepared to, you know, I don't know, waste half the money. And I figured if I had 90 million left, that'd be fine, you know. But ideally not all of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to Russia twice to try to buy ICBMs.
Oh, interesting.
How'd that go? And who do you call?
The Russian rocket forces.
Do they sell ICBMs? Does that work?
Yeah.
You got to tell us the story then. I want to know who
Turns out you can buy anything in Russia.
Yeah. I like, please walk me down that. I want to know how you made that phone call. And when you get there, how did that work?
And what do you tell your friends?
Yeah.
You know, listen, I'm going to Russia to buy some ICBMs. I might not return, you know, depends on the situation.
Literally.
Yeah. So it gets slightly less insane when you understand that the Russians had to demolish a bunch of their ICBMs because of SALT talks, like the peace, because of basically an agreement between the United States and Russia to reduce the total number of ICBMs.
Sure.
Russia was actually obligated to scrap a bunch of their ICBMs. So if you took their very biggest ICBMs, you could convert those into a rocket, add an additional stage, and send something to Mars.
So those are big enough with one more stage to get to Mars.
To send a small payload to Mars, yeah.
Huh.
So the SS-18.
So you try to buy ICBMs. Do you succeed or no? Or do you figure out you got to build your own instead?
They kept raising the price on me. So, because I figured, like, look, they're going to throw these things in the scrapyard anyway.
Yeah.
I should get a really good deal.
Yeah.
Right? So the price started out at 4 million. Then the next conversation, they were at 8 million. Then the next conversation, they were at like 19 million. And I'm like, this is before we signed a contract.
By the way, was there another bidder? Was there another bidder, or were you the only one trying to buy them?
I think, I don't know if there were other bids, but they didn't mention any other bids.
Yeah.
But I was like, man, if the price is increasing this much before the contract's signed, I'm really going to get fleeced after the contract's signed.
Yeah.
So I got pretty frustrated there. Actually, in some cases, we got into like shouting matches in Moscow. Some guy shouting at me in Russian. I'm shouting back at him in English.
I'm very glad
with
that
my
you didn't go to
interpreter's
Siberia. That could have gone really badly.
You know, I'm like,
so you were all, I mean, you're all in.
Stop ripping me off. In Moscow.
Yeah.
So, man, I should have recorded that. That would have been one for them.
How many days were you there negotiating that first time? I mean, was this like ongoing?
Yeah. This took place. These conversations took place over probably 6 months or so.
Wow.
And then the final trip there was with Mike Griffin, who later became NASA administrator. I actually realized in the course of this that my original premise was wrong. That America actually has plenty of will to go to Mars, but it just needs a way to go to Mars that is affordable and that doesn't break the budget. You know,
as you know, we couldn't even get to the space station. We needed the Russians to get us to our own space station.
That was embarrassing.
It really was pitiful.
I'm not sure most Americans know just how much we were being fleeced. Like, I think they got up to like $90 million a seat.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. For a seat that cost them like $10
That was pre-Doge, obviously.
Yeah. But it was the only
It was before SpaceX.
Yeah.
But $90 million a seat for a seat that cost them $10 million is high.
Yeah. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
So a few months ago, you and I were down in Boca Chica with the president for a Starship launch. And it is incredible what you built in Boca Chica.
Yeah.
You know, 5 years ago, it was an empty beach at the southern tip of Texas.
Basically a sandbar, yeah.
And it's now a city and a factory where you're building a rocket ship a month with incredible precision.
Yeah.